We'll welcome Lonnie Sinkhill from North Carolina State University. Lonnie is NC State University's Waste Reduction and Recycling Outreach Coordinator. She works with students, staff, and faculty to develop, implement, and promote waste diversion programs such as the Zero Waste Wolf Pack at Carter Finley Stadium and the Zero Waste Wolves student organization. Lonnie is also pursuing her master's degree in climate justice from NC State. Welcome, Lonnie.
Thank you so much. Let me just go ahead and share my screen. So yes, hello everybody. My name is Lonnie Sinkhill and I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the outreach leader, as you just heard. And my job is to lead our campus to zero waste through education and outreach. But as most of us know, recycling alone will not save our planet, and it will not save the communities that we live in and the people. And so I hope with this presentation, I'm going to give you an idea on how I discuss some big, sometimes uncomfortable, but really obvious social justice issues as part of my zero waste work. And while I do work with everyone on campus, today I am focusing on my interactions with students. So let me tell you a little bit about NC State University. We're located here in Raleigh. It's basically a small city and we operate like one. Our department, Waste Reduction and Recycling, is the campus waste hauler. So we own and operate our own fleet of trucks. We even have our own on-site compost facility so we can close the loop on food waste management. And I love our university. I love the work that we do to solve global challenges and make our community and our planet great. But this work would not be possible without our being a land-grant university. And the amazing work that we do today is being continually paid for by land that was taken from Indigenous people. And not just here in North Carolina. We sit on land that was once stewarded by the people of the Tuscarora and the Catawba tribes, but also because of land that was taken from Indigenous people from across the country, including Minnesota. Additionally, this land has borne witness to over 400 years of enslavement, torture, systemic mistreatment of African people and their descendants. And so I recognize them today in order to break the cycle of colonization and the continued erasure of Indigenous and Black people. And I also share this with you today to help impart the true message and the true part of all of my work, and that is everything is connected. The land that we hold space on now, our zero waste work, all of our students, we're connected. And so this is both my personal and cultural ethos as Kanaka Maoli, Indigenous Hawaiian, and this is why I do the work that I do. I want our students in our campus community to understand that we're connected. And then they can see how their actions matter, their decisions matter, their lives matter, and that they have the power to make a difference. And that is why step one for me about incorporating anti-racism and intersectional environmentalism into my work is about acknowledgement. To paraphrase Ibram X. Kendi, the opposite of racist isn't not racist, it's anti-racist. Anti-racism is an action in which we actively confront racism and systems of oppression. When we communicate this to our students, we're telling them that we see them, that we believe them, and that we support them. We may not always have the words, and that's okay, because you don't need to recreate this content. A lot of it already exists. For example, the land acknowledgement that I shared with you just now was written by an NC State staff member and Lumbee tribe member to be used for staff and to be used by the university. And so, what are resonating messages that are coming from your schools, your chancellors, the various colleges and departments on your campus, your OIED or GLBT or African American student centers? Share this information on your socials. Follow these accounts, and not just ones run by your institution, but also ones that are run by your student organizations. Comment and like on their posts and socials. Also, be involved in person. And I know that's been hard this past year, but you can be involved, show up, attend events by people who are doing this work on your campus. Support the students and their work. And it's not just about providing waste management. It's about supporting them through promotion and participation. And most importantly, listen and learn. Because this is what will truly help you. It's helped me continue to understand more deeply and be able to see those connections more clearly. We also must acknowledge the truth of our own work. For example, here at NC State, I message a lot about reducing our waste through just say no to plastic bags and just say no to that printed receipt. And this messaging, it's a direct link to my job description, but it's not a universal message depending on the identities that you hold. And it also speaks to the privilege that many of us hold, myself included. I can make a purchase. I can put it in my reusable bag or not even use a bag. I can say no to the receipt and I can walk out of a store, no problem. Others cannot, including my husband and my son, who are both Black men. And I did not really realize this until my son came to the age when he was able to go into stores by himself and, make a purchase on his own. And my husband was adamant that he always get the store's plastic bag and he always get the receipt, even if he was just buying a pack of gum. And when he said those words, it clicked. I saw my privilege. And I share this truth with you, as well as with my students, when we begin discussing waste reduction strategies, that sometimes we have to say it out loud for it to click for other people. And that message is that we don't all have the same experiences and interactions. And therefore, our programs are not universal. So a large part of what we do is to build knowledge. We want our students to understand waste, what it is, what bin does it go in, what happens to it, how to reduce it. And I know for many of us, a really fun activity is a waste audit. I love waste audits, where students can really get their hands on waste and see the impact. This past year, we pivoted away from campus buildings and waste audits to hosting virtual personal waste audits. This type of activity helped the students learn not just what goes where, their landfill, recycling, what's compostable, but it also allowed us to have some really great discussions on why do they have what they have? Why did they buy what they bought? How did they get it? Do they have transportation? Do they use a bus or a bike? Do they have access to grocery stores? Do they live in a food desert? Can they recycle where they live? And surprisingly, majority of them do not have access to recycling, even within the city of Raleigh. Can they compost? Do they pay for a composting service? Do they live in a house that has a backyard where they could compost at home? And so these activities were a bridgeway and to help your students better understand waste. It's not just about the diversion rates, but really how their identities and their peers' identities determine our interactions with why we have what we have and what we can do with it, and what are the strategies to reducing our waste. So we also build our knowledge, as you know, through a lot of presentations. And I'm sure we all discuss that linear versus circular economies and cradle to grave design theories. But these discussions also provide you an opportunity to dig deeper, to help them see the connection between the fossil fuel and plastic industries and environmental racism and injustices that exist. And I am not an expert, but it is amazing that we all work at universities where there are experts. So featured is Dr. Brian Emanuel and Dr. Louis Rivers, and they actually just released a new nationwide analysis that shows that counties with higher social vulnerability are home to a denser web of natural gas pipelines. So another way that we can integrate JEDI into our work is actually connecting your students with experts on your campus. And it's also important to build their knowledge about the land where they work and study, where they are. North Carolina is often called the birthplace of the environmental justice movement because of the PCB protests that occurred in 1982. And many students don't know about the history, even if they grew up in North Carolina. It is not being taught. And so I ask you, what can you share about your school and about your state? And it's not just what happened centuries, decades, or years ago, but it's also about what is happening now in your area. So building knowledge, again, is more than just having your students understand waste diversion rates. We want them to be data-driven, yes, to find those solutions. But we want them also to dig deeper, to connect to their personal experiences with those of their peers, and to connect with the faculty and research that is going on your campus, as well as the local knowledge about the history and the current environment. Here at NC State, our motto is Think and Do. And so we've discussed having students involved with this learning process and building their knowledge. But what are other ways that we can actively engage with our students in order to promote and support anti-racism and social justice? If you looked at my job description, these are some responsibilities, just a few of them that I oversee, and that's our social media at NC State Recycles. I hire and work with student interns every year. I'm the advisor to a student organization, and I also oversee our volunteer programs. And so briefly how to get this in, I love that Oregon brought up their social media because I think that is an excellent way to acknowledge and build knowledge and engage with people. And again, we want to share and promote work. Share and promote the work of your students, of faculty, of the student centers about what's going on in your campus. And I use social media a lot because this is where our students are, right? We're meeting them where they operate. And it's also a really great informal connection to put a face to who you are. You could join me every Wednesday for a Waste Education Wednesday. And we have those featured on our IGTV. And that content is evergreen. And I think this is really important because it provides a way, if you are talking about really important, serious stuff, anti-racism work, and it's in a presentation, only the people who are attending it hear it and see it and know it. And then it's done. But when it's on your social media or your website, that way it can live forever. And so people can always see it and access it if they would like. Internships also provide a wonderful peer-to-peer educational opportunity for our campus, but they also provide a really great stepping stone for students to learn and grow their careers. And we're not just hiring for now, but we're playing a role in the future of waste management, right? And so I ask, think about where you are posting your positions. What networks do you share your hiring notices with, even with students? And are you offering them a professional experience? Because we know that there is a green ceiling in our industry. And research has indicated that we often receive a lot of really diverse and smart talent into our internship pipelines, but we don't nurture them enough to go through the entire organization. So what can you do to support your interns while they're working for you now and also beyond the role with your office? And I always say, model what you want to be seen in your own life. Think about what you're paying. Think about the flexibility schedules. Think about the continued education opportunities for your interns. And then, of course, work and support the student organizations on your campus. Your role may be as an advisor, or you just may be a resource, but find ways to collaborate with all of them. Because when you begin to see that we are all connected, trust me, no matter your role as a recycling or sustainability coordinator, you are connecting directly to their mission. So use your position to support the groups on your campus, connect with them, also connect them with access to funding, to job openings, to events, to even news or papers that you come across that are applicable to them. And talk with everyone. The more that I expand my circle, the more I learn and the more I can showcase and highlight the connections that we have with one another. And this is a really vital step because my programs rely on volunteers. Our Zero Waste Wolfpack program with NC State Athletics is run by my student interns, and it takes roughly 225 plus volunteers per season. I host another 200 plus students for other projects during the year. Now, I believe in the work our volunteers do. It's experiential learning in a really fun environment in which our volunteers get to engage with our fans and community members and talk about composting and recycling. But more than that, they get to talk about their clubs and what they study and why they're there. And so it's not just about the student experience. It's about the community's interaction with the students. They get to interact with people who sometimes look like they do and sometimes don't. And so when you reach out and you include people, you are showing again that we are all connected. We're connected through the waste that we generate. We're connected to our campus. We're connected to athletics, go Pack, but we're connected to one another. And step 4, final one, advocacy. So what I've been talking about so far in acknowledging and recognizing colonization and white supremacy in our lives and institutions, building this knowledge about how these systems interact with our work and zero waste messaging, and how we can learn and support one another within these systems through engagement. This all lives at the heart of this kind of basic model of sustainability, people, planet, profit. And this is what this term of intersectional environmentalism is about. It's intersectional because it speaks to how we all carry and live very different identities, which come with their own privileges as well as obstacles. And that affects how we interact with everything. And that can feel overwhelming because it's a lot, but it also should be really comforting because that means that we all have a role to play. And we don't have to be experts, but we can be scientists and artists, dancers, engineers, dreamers, writers. For me, intersectional environmentalism speaks to finding those diverse solutions to the problems that we face that are as multifaceted and complex as we are. And so that means that by protecting people, we can simultaneously protect the planet. And that means there's just not one way. It allows our students to see how they can influence, inspire, and implement real change. A truth about NC State is that the majority of all of our zero waste programs on our campus began because of students, their ideas, their advocacy, their work. And so I like to use the 4 levels of action that I learned from Will Grant. I think he's an East Coast Oregon guy. And I heard it from Project Drawdown, and it was featured in that a webinar that I saw. But basically, there are these levels of participation and action that we each can do. And it's a linear progression, and it helps students to see how they can magnify work and move beyond just bringing my bottle, but how they can impact their friends and family, their school and their campuses, and then of course, policy. Learn more about that. You can Google it. But in summary, I believe that these 4 keys can really help everyone integrate anti-racism and intersectional environmentalism into your waste reduction work. And it's important that you connect with what matters, and this matters. It always had, but it's at a forefront of what's going on now in our country and on our campuses. But also be authentic. And by that, I mean, be authentic in your interest. Be authentic in knowing that we're at the place you are, right? And that is okay. Dig deeper into what you're already doing to showcase the connection. Everything that we do can connect to this work, but sometimes we just have to say it out loud and really begin the conversations to talk about it. Support students, their dreams, because honestly, they have the solutions, the answers are there. And then of course, showcase the ways that they can impact the campus, the planet, and their communities, and just be that springboard for them. Our mission at NC State is to promote an integrated approach to problem solving that transforms lives. And it provides leadership for social, economic, and technological development across North Carolina and around the world. But in order to transform lives, we need to save them and actively work against systems of racism, oppression, and violence. So to make this clear, silence is compliance. So we need to be actively anti-racist. And it will take all of us. And it may get uncomfortable, but the solutions are possible because many paths will lead us to success if we're open and mindful to an intersectional approach. And thank you. That's my contact information, but it'll be shared with you. So I will stop sharing my screen.